Hey guys, Graham, what's cracking? Back at you with what the hell is this? No, we're rolling with it. I don't even care. Michael Crichton. I read another Michael Crichton book. This one is called, I almost said the Terminal List. It's the Terminal Man. Monkey Flapper, I have worked 24 and a half hours in my first 2 days back from vacation. The fact that I haven't blown up a swear jar with pennies yet is, to me, it's impressive. Nobody cares. The Terminal Man came out in the early 1970s, like 72, I want to say. I just found out that it was also adapted into a film that I've never seen. Back when I was on a really strong Michael Crichton kick in middle school, I remember checking this book out from the library, but I didn't finish it. I didn't really get into it. I read like the first couple of pages, and that was it. Wasn't really able to get into whatever the heck was going on. The premise is that there's this guy named Harry Benson who got into a car accident, and ever since then he's had symptoms of epilepsy. He gets these really strong seizures, and they are increasing in intensity and frequency. The only warning he gets that they're coming on is he'll feel like he's smelling something really bad, and then with increasing regularity, like he'll wake up somewhere that he wasn't before, and several hours have gone by, and in too many cases, he's kind of beaten the piss out of the nearest person to him. So he's got charges pressed against him. He doesn't know what's going on, and he ends up becoming a test subject in this neurological surgery experiment thing, where basically these doctors put a computer in his brain to regulate these symptoms. To add a degree of complication, Harry is a bit of a technophobe. And even back in the 70s, before we had home computers to the extent that we have them now, or even to the extent that we had them in the 80s, like it was still a very rare thing. He was still very worried about humans blending too much of their lives and even their personal bodies with machinery, with circuitry, and with technology. For me, being an 80s and 90s kid, growing up in that era, it's easy to be a bit of a generational homer and think that my generation was the first one to grow up with these ideas as kind of casual tropes of sci-fi that are slowly becoming sci-fi, science, like real stuff. But there's an afterword in this book that talks about this technology and this idea and its development. And even back in the 1970s, Crichton's afterward said that this idea was close to a century old. The idea of people becoming too reliant on machinery and becoming integrated with it, and all sorts of similar problems. It's not like James Cameron just up and said, like, hey, what if machines take over the world? I bet nobody's thought of that before. Let me make the Terminator and it'll be this mind-blowing movie. Like, that was an idea that a couple of people had come to, and he just happened to have a tremendous take on it with the Terminator movie. In The Terminal Man, Harry is, like I said, he's a technophobe. He's worried a lot about this stuff, but as the doctors are observing him for several days after this surgery, he's supposed to be on sedatives because they know that there can be at least a risk that the computer in his brain will, what's the right word to say this, will hit kind of a logical gap. It'll get into a feedback loop, and it'll start working around its own default programming if it's hit with the same stimuli too often. In this case, his fear of integrated technology and human over-reliance on it or human over-interaction with it breaks through, I guess, some of these safety protocols, these safeguards in the brain computer, and he starts to go on a bit of a rampage. Now, the nurses were supposed to keep him on sedatives so that he couldn't reach that level of aggression with the computer in his head, but due to a very understandable mistake, the nurses thought that the sedative was mother of pearl, was prescribed to him by the wrong doctor, so they didn't give it to him on one of his midnight doses. And when the rest of the stuff in his system wore off, he goes on a human cyborg rampage and is trying to blow up a big centralized computer somewhere. All of that I just described is probably a little bit more interesting than the actual execution of this book, which I think has a lot to do with why this book isn't better known or better loved, even amongst committed Crichton readers like myself. The concepts and ideas and sparks that are components of this book are very good, and they are explored well in some curious and interesting ways, but I don't think that the overall execution of the novel is all that exciting or well done, which will inevitably influence the legacy and popularity of this book compared to other things in Crichton's oeuvre. This was about 10 years before he published Congo, probably less than that, and a decade and a half before he originally published Jurassic Park and then later The Lost World. Those are obviously going to be the two books for which he is best known, but several of his movies in the 90s especially were adapted to film, due in no small part to the success of Jurassic Park. I was recently watching a video with Bruce Campbell. They do this thing with actors where they pull them into this channel. I can't remember which channel it is, and they read lines to the actor from old movies that the actor was in, and then the actor tries to guess which movie it was from. And Bruce Campbell was on this channel, and he got a line from Congo, and he remembered it, and he talked about it. He says, Congo gets a bad rap, and every once in a while people kind of razz me for being in it. And he had a kind of a bit part in the beginning. He wasn't the main character or a heavily featured character in that movie. But he started listing off who wrote the screenplay, what it was based on, who the director was, who the photographers were. There's a difference between cinematographers, like whoever was actually doing like the film directing. It's different from the overall director of the movie. But this guy was in it who had done this, and that guy was in it who had done that, and there was Spielberg, and there was Crichton, there was all this stuff. Like, on paper, that movie should have been an absolute belter, but the execution was a bit lackluster and whatever. But the way he describes it, he goes, there is nobody in Hollywood who wouldn't take that role when it was offered. And so, I took it. Congo was a little bit more exciting, and it's a little bit better known because it was adapted to a film. Congo Sphere was another one. I've done a video defending Sphere. Timeline. Book was better than the movie, but I get why it wasn't everybody's cup of tea. And he was starting to, we'll say, kind of decline. There were diminishing returns towards the end of his career with several of his books for various reasons. But all of this is to say that The Terminal Man had a strong idea, and if I were to give it a star rating, I'd say 3 out of 5. Overall, it wasn't bad. It wasn't his most exciting work, but the ideas in it were strong, and there was a good bit of action and excitement and all of that stuff. I keep saying excitement, sorry. There were some info dumping moments and stuff, the kind of thing that is simultaneously a staple of Crichton's work, but also something he got better at as he went along. All of that stuff makes it a fascinating and entertaining read. Overall, the audiobook was under 8 hours. I had a good time reading it. Excuse me. Like I said, I'm still not completely adjusted to my sleep schedule after coming back from vacation. And I'm glad that I read it and that I can check that box in Michael Crichton's bibliography. It was not a disappointing read. It just didn't knock my socks off. But it was cool to see that even in like 1972, people were worried about computers taking over your brain and cyborgs and all of that stuff. Like, hey, it's not as new as my generation. It's been around for a while, even before that. I don't know anything about the movie, haven't seen it or whatever, but if you want to read the book, I guess just, there's a content warning for profanity up to and including the fully leaded, fully caffeinated word. And there are a couple of scenes with like exotic dancers and stuff because Harry, in a complete surprising twist, likes girls who dance and stuff. And there are a couple of mentions of bedroom scenes and descriptions and stuff, but other than that, like, it doesn't revel in any of that stuff. It's just there, it's present, and overall, I'm glad that I got that one behind me. So that's The Terminal Man by Michael Crichton. Let me know what you guys think. I'm almost home, so y'all drive safe. See you out there.